which leg, I think.
Which leg? Well, all of us this leg.
Yes.
And then we change halfway.
I don't know, that doesn't seem to work for me.
In synchronous.
I don't know whether to do it closed or just a bit more open. Actually, I shouldn't do another button, because I'm like you. Hey. We're getting comfortable now. I feel a bit self-conscious.
I don't want to frighten people, so I think.
Okay. Right. We're just kind of deciding how we're going to look.
Image
is very important.
Image is very
Image is very important. So the next bit of talking is going to be about the skills that you guys hopefully need to use in order to be successful.
Skills to pay the bills.
The skills to pay the bills, yeah, I like that. I mean, if we think mindsets is kind of like the precursor to the skills. So the way I see it is mindset is kind of like that's what you need to get your head in the game, and then the skills are how you then late students.
Typical students.
Late slips. The skills relate to the manifestation of the mindset, okay? I hope that sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
So, skills. What skills do you need to make it to be successful? What skills do you use in your everyday work? And if we could start this side, that would be brilliant.
I think being able to transmit your ideas sort of succinctly is very useful, because obviously we've all got access, I assume, to the internet and all these things, and you've got bands sort of throwing things at you constantly about whether they about going to their pages and following them on Twitter and that sort of stuff. And what you have to be able to do is if you are one of those bands, is to get your point across very, very quickly, but also not just in that sort of vague way, in that general way, but when you're meeting someone, and you were saying earlier about these, occasionally your fate will put something in your way which doesn't happen very often, like a meeting with some huge label or something like that. Being able to kind of get your idea across very, very quickly. I mean, they call it an elevator pitch, because it's in seconds you can get your whole spiel across. I just hate those sort of things. Really, I don't really like thinking like that. But it's useful to be able to be articulate, but also succinct. I could go over loads. I think that's the first one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely agree. One of the most important skills to have is communication skills, and that pervades everything you do. If it's from just speaking on the phone to somebody booking a gig, speaking to people when you're at a gig, and then actually speaking to people when you're doing the gig, communication is key. Because again, if you don't get your point across, if you don't portray yourself properly, then people aren't going to understand you, people aren't going to book you, people aren't going to give you money.
But also following up as well. I mean, it's all very well being able to sort of pitch yourself and get that initial gig or book it, whatever, but also to keep on that relationship, because it's all about relationships all the time. It's not about having someone's phone number in Paris and who runs a venue. It's about actually getting to know that person, and then you can expand. We were talking just now. Sorry, I couldn't get your name before. Hello. We were talking about how you have to sort of. I forgot what we were talking about, actually. No, it seemed very relevant just now. You see, always fast. But so after a gig, you do a gig, and then you talk to the people who are there, and you keep sort of touching base with everyone, and
Yeah, and I think after that, also you said it as well, is being prepared. I know it doesn't sound like a skill, but it is a skill. You've got to put the hard work into being prepared when you actually do have that opportunity to actually communicate with somebody and do your elevator pitch. You have to be prepared for it. If you get one of those lucky breaks, it'll mean nothing unless you're prepared for it. Like, that means doing your homework, knowing exactly how you're going to say it to people, having a demo or having something on your phone saying, look, this is it, listen to my stuff, things like that. So yeah, being prepared. And yeah, as you were saying before, the mindset leads into the skill. And I want to say it again, being professional, being professionally nice, it is a skill. It's a mindset, but to put it into practice, it is a skill.
Yeah, these are all the cheesy 3 ones. But teamwork, being able to work in a team. I mean, you guys before, you do sound, you're a teacher as well. I work in a team in an office, I work in a team in milk slice. If you can't communicate and be professional and all that and be succinct and to the point in your own business with your own people, well then how are you going to do it to the public or when you're trying to sell yourself? An example of it is with Milk Size. So Milk Size's first product is band art, particularly relevant for musicians in the room. It's going to be like a dating app. So somebody's a guitarist, needs a drummer, GPRS search, you find the drummer, you chat with them, you go and make a band, brilliant, thumbs up. I come from a business background, and although I'm a big geek, I can't make technical things. So I've aligned myself with someone technical, because I knew that in a team that they're the expert, and I respect them as well. That's an important thing. So teamwork's really important, because I can't make that product. I can't physically make the thing. So I align myself with the right people.
I was saying, like, teamwork, communication within teamwork. Yeah, most bands split up because they don't communicate properly. If you put an originals band together, and one of you wants to do metal, one of you wants to do jazz, one of you wants to do punk, but if you haven't communicated at the beginning, it's going to fall apart. If you don't communicate within yourselves, it's never going to work. You need to be clear with each other.
In my housemate's band, they practice like 4 times a week, and one of their practices is they have a meeting.
Yeah, band meetings are very important because
that's their practice. They don't bring any instruments. They air all their dirty laundry, sort of shout at each other and shake each other, and they all have a big hug at the end.
Well, the thing is that it's very hard when you're doing a band. It's a very intense thing because you're trying to be creative. You're trying to get everything done as quickly as possible sometimes. So sometimes it's very hard to communicate within yourselves honestly without feeling you're going to upset people. So one band that I did when I was younger, an originals band, we always made it very clear from the outset that when we were bringing songs together and we were like making those songs and arranging it, if we didn't like it, we would be very clear about why we didn't like it or why we liked it. We didn't like to say, "Oh, I don't like that, it's rubbish." Why? Because I don't like your hat. That's not communication, that's just becoming personal. Because doing music is a very personal thing, especially when you come to 3 people or 3 other people or even one other person and say, "I've written this, validate it for me." And if they don't validate it for you, you take it personally because it is a personal thing. But you have to get past that point. If you want to create something beyond that, you have to let your ego stay behind. And again, communication, it's a very hard thing to do, but if you can nail it, then you can get a lot further along with a lot less heartache and a lot less ball ache.
Yeah, definitely. I'd definitely back up communication skills. I think they speak for themselves, definitely. I think coming from my side of the thing, I think engineering sometimes should be called problem solving rather than engineer. I think you've got to have really good skills in that. I think that can go for being a musician as well, isn't it? It's finding the problem to the next verse, or how to deal with your bassist or your drummer who's hitting too many cymbals or whatever. But for me, I've got to be quick on how to solve problems. I think I've spoken to you in class saying the show must always go on, even if I get run over in between sound check. The show won't stop in tribute to me, it'll still carry on. And likewise, when I turn up to work to do a sound check, you never know when I go to turn the amps on, they might be broke, the leads might be broke. It's about not panicking at them points and being able to get through so the doors open on time and the show does go on. I think another big one is patience in a way, and that kind of goes with communication, doesn't it? And that being nice, I think that ties hand in hand with that. But you can deal with so many people who can be abrupt. And I guess looking at different styles and genres, and I guess going back to earlier when you were talking about you played these songs 2,000 times, you know what I mean? Again, as an engineer, I have a certain style that I like. I think it grows more into more peaceful music the more engineering you do. You just want something a bit more chilled out. 80% of my income comes from heavy metal music. I wouldn't say that is my favourite genre, but I've still got to study it, I've still got to listen to it, I've still got to have time for that band and do a good job for that band. It's having the patience to do that as well. Again, if I turned my nose up at that and was an arse with them, they wouldn't employ me again, and I wouldn't have earned half the money I have done in the business, you know.
think a sense of context as well, like you talk about, you know, it's about the show, and it's not about the band show, it's about the showbiz in general, and the problem with everyone's guilty with this across all the fields. Promoters who are just there to kind of make today work and make, get in the black for that particular night, rather than building a whole sort of longevity of their gigs. The band who just want to kind of be famous or be rich or get a blowjob or whatever, and the venue who just wants to make sure that they're selling enough beer, all these things, but they're all working for exactly the same thing. They just often don't talk about it enough. So having that sense that you are one little cog in it, even if you're for an hour and a half in front of the microphone, you are the most special person in the room in terms of the magic. You're actually still just a cog in the whole thing, because it won't work without the engineer, it won't work without the lights being on, the electricity being on, the audience being there. So having that sense of context.
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing about being professional. If there's one person and you're at a gig that you want to be nice to, it's the engineer. Do not forget that, because he's the one in control. If you've pissed him off just by being not professional, he can make you sound bad just a couple of turns of a knob. So always be nice to your engineer.
I can make you sound like you're not from this planet, to be honest, and some people want that, but
that's the first thing I learned, be nice to sound guy.
Yeah, always be nice to your sound guy.
I think the key's in the title, the music industry entrepreneur. I mean, what skills do you need to be an entrepreneur? That's a really long conversation.
Yeah.
Could we start it? Could we touch on it?
We certainly can, yeah.
Okay.
No, but it's about a lot of things, because there's that sort of, with the entrepreneur, then you go into that other conversation of what's a manager and what's a leader, and are they the same thing? And entrepreneurs a big label. It doesn't necessarily have to be about being business savvy. It's great if you are, but it's just about a bit of nice about something, about taking ownership.
About creating opportunities, isn't it?
Yeah.
As anything else, and that's what we do all the time. You have to, because everything's always kind of swirling about.
Well, it's back to that sort of survivalism. If you're going to stand still, that's not good enough. And if what you're doing at the time isn't going to be sustainable, then bingo, you look at the opportunities around you, I guess.
it's that organisation as well, isn't it? And I think that's sometimes difficult to tie into a musician's world. Or is that the outside concept of a musician? A lot of people look outside into a musician and go, lazy bastard, ain't going to get up in the morning. And a lot of people have that concept, particularly in education, in fact. Music often comes last on the educational bill, which is unfortunate when you consider that the creative industries probably provide about 40% of the British economy. That's people driving to work, listening to it in the cars, wherever. It creates a lot, not just music I'm talking about the full extent of the entertainment industry. But I think it's really important, that's why we are conning you here about being organised, even if it's just having your work organised into a folder. I think it's really important that, because if you're not organised, you're not going to be able to do all these things that are being talked about. Keep on getting the job, managing money.
It's a premise, really. It's practice. Yeah. It might not be turning up and playing gigs around the country. It might just be getting your coursework in time. But it's practice, and it sets a premise. That's what you want to do with your life. You want to be on time. You want to do the best that you can in every opportunity that you have. Because if you can't do it amongst your peers, your class, well then, who's going to care if you go out and do it in the real world?
I think it all goes back. You mentioned about being prepared, and I touched on it before. But being prepared, again, being organised are the same thing. It's like even simple things of like having a spare set of strings in your guitar bag. If you turn up to a gig and you've broken your strings, you don't have any strings, you can't do the gig. So it's being prepared, being organised, as you were saying before. It's just simple life skills, really, which are very hard to put into practice. In
that sense, that there is no shortcut as well. I mean, you can go on the X Factor and be famous for that sort of 3-month period and have that huge audience, but then you won't have it again in a year's time. Whereas if you build it, then you might get to that point where you've got that sort of people who actually invest in what you're doing and your work rather than in the phenomenon. I mean, I've known bands. The first band I was in, it fell apart because of people kind of wanting to skip to that rock and roll excess bit before they even actually got enough songs to really fill out a whole set. and people doing heroin and all that sort of stuff, and you just think, well, we're not getting a chance to do the thing we really want to do. You could do that stuff later on, but we're not even getting through to the audience who are here in this pub.
Yeah.
And I think it might be going off into a different area when we start bringing the X Factor syndrome into the music industry. But I think that is having an impact, particularly on the people who are just leaving school. That's what they've been brought up with.
It's the psychology there.
It's the psychology that it's so easy. My little girl goes, I want to be a singer, Dad. I'm going to go and queue for the X Factor. No, you're not.
But it's a really old phenomenon. It's not very new, is it?
It's not, but it seems so media generated now, where even starting a business, they want it now.
Yeah.
It's like you're saying, there's no build up to that, and the hard graft, they want it there now. They want the Google effect as well, don't they?
Yeah, I think the
Now.
internet as well, I think, has played a big part in that, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Being able to, you type it in, it turns up. You don't have to sit and read a book
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. I mean, that has its benefits as well if you do use it right, of course. But it's just, you've got to remember, you're not just going to get it there and then, like Louis says. You've got to build that.
But, we all grew up with the idea of the big rock and roll superstar, like Hendrix and people like that. But those very much that's the blip, isn't it? I mean, like most people aren't that. Even before the internet and all that sort of stuff. Even when the music industry, in the old sense, was working in that traditional way of like putting out records and we're getting money off them, and there's no piracy and that kind of thing. It still didn't really work for most people. It's just a question of just because now the internet can make everyone feel like they could be that, because you've got the immediate sort of, you can see your likes going up on Facebook, that sort of stuff. I mean, it makes very perverted sort of sense.
That's the thing to sort of say, physically, what skills, what can you do, whether you like them or not. Social media is really, really important. About knowing what's next with social media, and not just okay, I'm going to do it because everyone else is doing it. That's the other thing. Make it work for whatever product or music, or if you're an engineer, it still can work. You can talk to people in the right way. It's about engaging your audience or your potential customers in an effective way. So you really got to know what you're about before you even start speaking to all of them. And with knowing what you're about, have your press pack ready, have your photos, have your songs. With all the best will in the world, you might tell someone about your really exciting band, but if you can't experience it, well, who cares?
As a saying, Steve Lawson once said, everyone is brilliant until you listen to them. That's true, isn't it? Everyone's going like me, like my band, that sort of stuff, and you do, and they might be brilliant, but it might not be your exact cup of tea, or you might not be in the mood for it right then. But everyone's shouting constantly.
And I think with musicians and bands as well, the classic one is that one person in the band does everything. And everyone else sort of just turns up to practice. And really, that's another question. Do you look at then, because they're the leader in everything outside of playing the music, do they then become the creative leader? That sort of power struggle and things like that. Share the responsibilities. Empower everyone in the band to make the band work outside of actually picking up your instrument and playing in the practice room.
I think I should mention, because what we've been talking about more applies a little bit more to originals music. It's slightly different in my line of work with function music, because the way that I run the band that I'm in, basically I'm the band leader, I book all the gigs and everything, and then effectively the 3 other members that are in the band, I employ them as freelance musicians. So for me, the skills that I need are definitely more business-like, definitely more organisational. Basically all my days are spent on emails, phones to clients, to mad women who are about to get married, who are going crazy. So as we said before, having patience with people, it is a massive skill. And and again, when you're doing function work, it's a different breed from doing originals work, because you turn up to a gig, you're playing other people's songs, you're playing songs that people know already, so you've got to be prepared, you've got to actually know the words, you've got to actually know the chords. Whereas you're doing your own music and it's the first time somebody's heard it, you can make a few mistakes and you can change around because they've not heard it, they don't know it. But when you're doing function works and people are expecting a certain thing, especially say like if you do a tribute act, people will know exactly what you're supposed to be playing. So if you're not prepared for it, you're not going to get any more work through it. So yeah, function work is a lot more business-like than doing originals. I'm not saying that originals music, you don't need the business side, because you really do if you're going to make it still. So.
Okay, great. There's loads of skills there, then, isn't there? Just before we end this little section, you kind of, I don't want the students to come away thinking, oh, we don't need to worry about social networking and we don't need to worry about. Do you think those skills are still important?
I definitely do.
Yeah, it's just the way you use them that's you might need to think about.
I think that, well, you know, the old system was always that someone was in control of the content and then they distributed it out, and it was very much a sort of one-way system. Whereas now bands, you know, on social media, well, everyone's on social media, just bands, you know, jewelry makers and whatever. It's a two-way membrane now, and that's the people who work social media in the most sort of efficient way are the ones who recognise that and see it as being a relationship rather than as being a sort of broadcast medium, because it's definitely not that. The reason I particularly like Twitter is because it's sort of kind of impersonal. You can kind of you can jump between the boundaries. It's not a closed community like Facebook is, but you know you have to be. I think you have to be everywhere and be what people want you to be on those things. So on Facebook today, I got quite a lot of replies to a thing because it's Roald Dahl Day, and I said, it's Roald Dahl Day. What's your favourite Roald Dahl book? You know, and people going, oh, whereas if I go, I'm playing a gig in, you know, Cambridge, people go, well, obviously you are. You're a band. You're supposed to be playing gigs all over the place. You know, there's no response there at all. But you know, you can kind of take it to them a little bit.
Yeah, it comes back to what I said. Don't just do it for the sake of doing it, because people get pissed off.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear about you being hungover. They just don't. They don't care. I'm hungover sometimes. I don't go tell everyone. You know. It's about knowing. It's about knowing, as you said, about what's appropriate for each platform.
The thing about audiences is, you know, we've got a very, my band's got a very strange, broad kind of audience. We've got a lot of old bikers, you know, we've played like the Hells Angel Festival and stuff like that, but we've also got people who send us their little videos from their cameras, their phones, of their 2-year-old kid like dancing to us or something like that. So it's going to go right across. And some of those people want a sort of traditional relationship with a band, which is just to listen to their music whenever they put something out. And some people, you know, who've grown up with the internet as more of a sort of natural thing in their lives, want to just know exactly what you're doing all day long. So the question is not to force feed the people who don't want your everyday life, but to also give enough to the people who do want it, and also state kind of what you're prepared to give as well. I mean, I actually don't like to know too much about the bands I like, because I want to sort of have the magic in place. But some people, you know, do. So finding that out, you know, who your audience is.
You're making content as well. You know, get it out there in the right way. If you've got this really good song, get it sort of mixed or produced in the right way, and get it up there instead of just talking about it or playing it at a gig. It's so important. Just don't. I've said it already, but don't use platforms if they're not appropriate. We get banned applications every year, and you go to your YouTube channel, and it's the standard YouTube channel with like a really shit video that someone's made from a crowd. Don't do it. It denigrates your product, and it's because we live in a world of the internet where we can click in and get something amazing straight away.
So would you, in that circumstance then, would you rather have them not linked to a YouTube channel? You'd rather that they just give you if they've got a good quality recording, just play the recording and leave the YouTube bit out of it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like anything, you know. It's all a performance, really. You can be a rock band and you can be playing at a stage, you know, like this, and you can get away with playing some sort of rock here, but but you could also do something pretty with strings. Whereas you go down to the Mad Ferret, you'll be drowned out a bit by the sort of the regular drinkers there. Same with Facebook and Twitter. Is what's appropriate for that particular medium.
And you can't sort of learn that. You just have to sort of. But you can learn it, of course you can. It's not taught. You have to get in and see what's around you and look around, and sort of play about with it. That's the other thing.
Great. Okay. That's the end of this talky bit. We've got now a bit of a demonstration and perhaps discussion about Liverpool Sound City. Preston College students have been going to Sound City now for a couple of years. We'd like to kind of show you what they do and if it's worth it. So give us 2 minutes just to get set up, and then we'll go from there. Okay. Thanks,